Ladies and gentlemen, Thursday night, it's Crawlspace Live. I'm Tim here today with Lance. What's up, Lance?
Oh, feels good. You know what? The town clock has struck 9 bells this evening, which always brings me joy. It always brings me joy. It's Thursday night. It's the one consistent thing that's been just a beacon in the night in this horrible year. This 2020. The only thing you can depend on is Thursday night, true crime Thursday on Get Vocal. If you listen, you can hear the church bells toll 9 p.m.
We've already got requests for you to not do the English accent in the chat room.
Because it's too much. I understand.
I'm a little worked up too, though, already, because last week we were shut down abruptly. We had some technical difficulties, but we want to thank and welcome back author Cheyna Roth to our airwaves, author of Cold Cases. How's it going, Cheyna?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you guys doing?
Can't be better. Yeah, can't be better. That book that Tim's holding up right there, that is a fantastic book. Cold Cases, a true crime collection. We're going to get into that, but tell us a little bit about yourself. What do? You are in radio, you're a writer, an occasional backpacker from what I've read.
Yeah, I try and do as much as possible. My husband tells me my ego is wrapped up in being busy for some reason. I don't know where that came from, but that is me. So right now I'm actually working in print. I'm a former public radio reporter. I used to cover politics. I covered the 2016 election for Michigan's NPR stations, as well as, everything else that was going on in 2016. You think 2020 is weird. 2016, the year we thought was going to be the craziest year ever. And now we're in 2020. We know better. So I did that for a few years, and now I work for MLive, which is a Michigan newspaper and an online site. I cover the environment right now, statewide. And yeah, I, in my spare time, wrote a book about a year ago is when I started it. And it's based on a number of cold cases that I came across and sort of worked with my publisher to figure out what cold cases we wanted to talk about. But I was approached by Ulysses Press to write the book because I also have a former life as a prosecuting attorney. I was a prosecuting attorney for a little over a year in a small Michigan county called Ionia County. Didn't love it. It wasn't quite for me. It takes a very special type of person to do that on a daily basis. And I was not that type of person. And so I became a journalist. And so the book kind of combines that experience as a prosecutor with my experience as a journalist and is littered with my sarcasm. And I just really wanted it to feel like you were sitting down and having a coffee with a good friend and talking about some of really interesting cases.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, I'm actually surprised didn't cut you off when you said NPR. He doesn't like NPR. He doesn't. No, he hates it. He is lobbying the government to pull funding. He thinks defund defund NPR, and he doesn't see the use for it. And he's like, they're so smarmy. He used the word smarmy.
I mean, there's probably some reporters, there's some in every bunch. But, I don't worry. I got out of there while the getting out was good. So,
well, and luckily most of that is not true. Just the part about them being smarmy. They're definitely smarmy.
I tried my best to really tone down my smarm while I was on the radio. I don't know how often I succeeded, but I tried my best.
Well, I will say your book is excellent. I've been reading it a lot today, and I love how, I mean, really, you've done a ton of research on each of these chapters, each of the stories you cover. So each chapter is a different cold case, and you really run the gamut because you cover art crime as well with the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist. And that is how we know you, how we got to know you through Empty Frames, that are art crime.
Yeah, I really wanted for the book to be about more than murder. When I was talking with my editor, there were a few cases that they really wanted to include, some popular ones like JonBenet Ramsey and the Black Dahlia. But I wanted to make sure that, there was a little bit of lightness in there. Not all crime is murder. In fact, most crimes do not involve assault or murder of any kind. So I wanted to include that. And as we discussed about the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, I mean, that's just an amazing art heist that I wanted to include. And then there was, of course, DB Cooper. And, the rest of it tends to be, either disappearances or serial murders or individual murders. But yeah, I wanted to kind of have a broad spectrum of different types of cold cases included.
What was sort of the most daunting one that you took on? Because you just mentioned you had JonBenet Ramsey, you have DB Cooper, you have one on the Golden State Killer, the Zodiac. Was there anyone that you were like, wow, that is that's so like the Zodiac? Like, were you expecting to uncover something about the Zodiac? Like, what was the most daunting thing? Here's my question. Did you feel the need to say something new about the Zodiac?
I felt the need to say something new about all of them. And I will confess that when I started researching, I started with the Zodiac and researching that one. I had like a whiteboard and I was like, I'm going to solve this. I got this. I'm going to figure this out. It's going to be fine. And I was like writing the codes on the thing. And then it took me like a day and I'm like, no, there's a reason that nobody has cracked this. This is not going to happen. But it was a very, especially the Zodiac was a very daunting chapter because there's been so much about podcasts. There's umpteen million movies. There's books. And so what I tried to focus on for each of these cases was not so much about okay, I need to find a new fact or, uncover, new evidence in these cases, but really it was more about what is a fresh perspective that I can bring to these cases that most people have probably heard about multiple times. So I tried to come up with different themes that I would notice as I was doing my research. So I really wanted to do the Cleveland torso murders because I was really drawn to the fact that Eliot Ness did not die the, Kevin Costner in The Untouchables heartthrob that I had assumed he had. It turned out that he died, an alcoholic, broke at his kitchen sink, feeling like a complete failure. And so, it was things like that I was uncovering as I was working on these cases that I thought, okay, here's something that might deserve to be elevated, or here's something that I can put some sort of a fresh perspective on.
Now, it's funny you mentioned the Eliot Ness thing because that's something that stood out to me. I the movie The Untouchables so many times as a kid, and they leave you with that perception of Eliot Ness. Like he put away Al Capone. It was this historic moment in crime history, and he rode off in the sunset and was probably given accommodations. But that's not the case. He was a severely tortured and alcoholic and broken human being.
Yeah, I mean, he rode off into Cleveland and thinking he was going to be, like their sort of top cop in the area. He was going to, fix the traffic problems and, do some other, just like, I'm here for the good of the people stuff. And that's not what happened. Instead, he got dumped into a place that was, overrun with poverty. It was in a very bad situation, and it just so happened that somebody started chopping up bodies and throwing them all over the place, and that was eventually his problem to try and solve. And the fact that he couldn't is incredibly tragic. And it's one of the things that I wanted to kind of continually focus on in each of these chapters was the victims, and to make sure that their voices on some level were heard and that they weren't just treated as props. And in that chapter, I really saw him as being one of the victims because it just completely destroyed his life, his inability to solve that case.
Well, I would say you definitely achieved honoring the victim in the case of the Black Dahlia, the chapter on her, because it really, really kind of stands out. You really dug into that. You really kind of tried to take away the nickname in a sense, I almost didn't want to use it tonight after I read that chapter.
Mission accomplished. Yeah. I mean, and that one was one where I found myself really ended up passionate about that case.
That's really funny that Tim said that, because before we started the show, he was like, I'm going to use that Black Dahlia line over and over and over until her head pops. So I think it's funny that he did a 180 again. I'm totally kidding. Go on. And I interrupted. I'm going to mute myself.
This is a conversation. I'm into it. No, but the Black Dahlia chapter, I think that was definitely one where I felt myself becoming very personally invested in it, because the more I read especially the media coverage of it at the time, the newspaper articles about Elizabeth Short and about what had happened to her, it felt so demeaning, and it felt like her essence had really been taken away from her. She was not treated as an individual person. She was treated as, victim with like a lowercase v. It was just really difficult to see her having to have gone through that after she had died. She was a very complete person, and unfortunately there's not a ton known about her as an individual. So I took it as, sort of my job to do the best that I could in the time that I had to really give her some sort of a voice, and to try and discourage people from going forward, from treating victims in that way, as though they are just these sort of props in these gruesome, macabre stories.
Mm-hmm. And how much research did you do per chapter? Like how many articles did you, yeah, because you cite like I think up to like 90 articles, I feel like, in a certain chapter. Yeah, how many how long did it take you to research for a chapter?
It took quite a bit. Newspapers.com, I'm constantly like giving them a shout out. I would love to be their new spokeswoman, because they were that's an incredible website. I mean, if you're ever just bored and are curious about, what it's just a case or coverage of anything, I mean, it's pretty user friendly. So I combed through a lot of their archives, a lot of their newspapers. There's a few of these cases are so old and so well known that the FBI has released their documents online. So, I did a lot of combing through different archival police reports and things like that. So how much research? I mean, it was a lot. I'll just say that. I mean, the book from when I signed the contract to when I sent them the final draft was about a year, which, talking with other people is kind of like, they only gave you a year. Like, that's insane. But it worked out really well. But yeah, a lot of that was spent doing the research and kind of taking it one chapter at a time, and just sitting down and, going through everything, highlighting and making notes. And then when I got to a certain place where I felt like, okay, I think I've got a handle on this, is when I would sit down and start like interpreting it in my voice and sort of writing through that chapter.
That's pretty cool. Interesting process. I'm surprised to know that in your chapter on Elizabeth Short, in your research, it didn't come up that my grandmother and Elizabeth Short were actually roommates for a period of time in Medford, Massachusetts.
I can't tell if you're being serious or not.
I am actually being dead serious.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know much about it other than that. I know, and in reading your chapter on her, it must have been after, I think she had gone to Florida for a while, and then before she went to California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It is such a small world.
Yeah.
So how did you find out about that? Like, did she tell you about that, or is it like family lore?
She was arrested for the murder briefly.
Okay, that makes sense.
They interrogated her for a little bit, but
no.
Yeah, she passed the polygraph.
No, it's just kind of like, I feel like it was just known in my family. I remember. I mean, I have my mom, and she has 6 sisters, so they were big into crime stories. So that was just kind of like known in the family, but I never really knew anything else about it. And I'm not really, I guess I could ask some of my aunts now to see if there's anything more to that.
Wow.
But yeah.
Small world.
Yeah.
Very small world. I thought for sure you were going to be like, actually, she did in fact kill the black. I mean, because there's just so many people.
She
I mean,
that
was one of the crazy things about writing this book.
Shut up, Leah. I'm pretty sure my grandmother never even went to California, so no, she couldn't have.
Well, I mean, do we really know our grandmothers?
Exactly.
Here.
Well, let me just say though, my grandfather, her husband, his nickname was Red. just like one of the suspects in the black.
This is something we might need to take offline.
But
I think we got to do some digging here. Is what I'm hearing.
But it wasn't that fellow, the fellow who was suspected.
Tell her about your uncle, Al DeSalvo. Yeah, Uncle Al. Uncle.
My mom met Albert DeSalvo.
Oh yeah,
that is
Chokey.
true. Yeah, she did meet him briefly. She was like introduced to him. Her friend. Yeah, this is crazy. We're going through all my family.
I love this. I'm super into this
tonight.
Wow. I have one. My dad shook O.J. Simpson's hand one time.
Before or after?
Yeah, when?
As far as I know, it was before. It was when he was in football. My dad somehow was at a practice or something, and he shook his hand. And that was one of the big things when that case came out. He was like, I shook that guy's hand. And I'm just, like, what are you talking about? What's going on?
Oh, I wanted it to be that he shook his hand on set of The Naked Gun.
Oh, no, unfortunately, no.
Good performance, sir. No.
Well, it is weird when you have like personal kind of brushes with, I guess, like a major case like that. Yeah, it is interesting, and really, Elizabeth Short's case I find compelling too. And you go through a lot of the suspects in there. Were there any that really kind of stuck out to you as being more likely?
Not really. That was one of those cases where, like happened in quite a few of them, where just like randos would come out of the woodwork and be like, it was me, I did it. And then you find out they're crazy or they want attention or whatever. I love that mug, by the way. I want one. Nice. So it was one of those cases where that happened so much that I think it really drowned out any ability to kind of find like who could have possibly actually done it. There's a lot of theories about that case. There's, theories that she knew the person. There's theories that, it was the doctor. I don't, for whatever reason, I don't find any of them to be extremely compelling. I think that particularly for a case like that, where they've been cold for so long, we just have to accept the fact that we're just not going to find the answer to this, because if we were able to, we probably would have by now. But that's the pessimist in me. So,
no,
sorry. I just wanted to make the point that you kind of make the case for a serial killer in the chapter, and I think it's really an astute observation, and I think that's pretty likely.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on what we know now or think we know now about serial murders, it has a lot of those hallmarks of it. And, there were other women at the time who, had these events, who were murdered in not exactly the same way. But I think that if they had that sort of language and that understanding at the time that there could be, some psychopath out there killing multiple people of sort of similar situations, I think that would have been something that they definitely would have explored. But, it was just, that's one of the interesting things about law enforcement and about solving crimes is like we're just always there's a continual evolution of it. And unfortunately, I think that the case was probably so long ago that we probably can't definitively come up with an answer, even using today's new technology. But I think that if this had happened, even 20, 30 years after it did, we probably could have figured it out.
And Shiloh in the chat room, who works in Los Angeles, adjacent to law enforcement at least. Try to be vague. I'm not. But she says that Hodel was totally a serial murderer, and Hodel was, I believe, one of the suspects, sort of outed by his son.
Yeah,
which is very bizarre little twist.
Yeah, that happened a couple times. There was Hodel said that his dad did it. There was another woman who said that her dad did it. And I think Hodel is an interesting study. Not Hodel, the accused individual, but Hodel, the son who keeps accusing this, because his sort of backstory of being a cop, and then sort of like, oh no, I discovered that my dad did it, is, if it's true, is bananas. But I tend to be one of those people where if I hear hoofbeats, I think horses, not zebras. So I think that if it's so crazy like that, I tend to be very skeptical of it. But, you know, I mean, he does have some interesting arguments for it. You know, some of the people that I spoke with, even after the book was finished, you know, they're very, very skeptical of Hodel. You know, they just don't think that he's got, you know, that he's, you know, making a lot of stretches and he's drawing a lot of conclusions that don't quite fit. But I think that the more interesting character in all of that is the son, and sort of what his, because now he's, you know, he's selling more books. He has the sequel. I correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like he also said that his dad was the Zodiac, or was responsible for something else. Somebody else in the chat, help me out here.
Yes,
he was. Was he like under suspicion for murder a couple of years before the Black Dahlia? Before
he was. He went to trial for what we now know to be essentially molestation. So I mean, he was clearly a very bad person. So, but I don't know that he was actually ever suspected of murder.
it really is a fascinating part. And Shiloh says that she knows Steve, the junior.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe Shiloh should pop on here and tell us about this.
Yeah, pop on.
I would love to hear. I'm so fascinated by him. I would love to hear more.
Yeah, that really is interesting to have the conviction, I guess, to say that you think your dad might have been this, the murderer of this famous victim.
Hi guys.
Shiloh, how's it going?
Good.
What's up, Shiloh?
I don't feel like this is my story to tell at all, though. But yeah, we did a panel with Steve last year. And so Scott and I kind of got to know him through that, and he and I have remained pretty close. And I am like halfway through one book of his 7 or whatever, because they're so dense. But yeah, she's right. He does also make the leap that his dad is responsible for the Zodiac killings. So kind of crazy.
What's he like in person when he's like explaining these connections? Because I feel like for me at least, I was like, okay, I could get on board with like maybe your dad's the killed Elizabeth Short.
Mm-hmm.
It's when he's like, oh, but he also killed the Zodiac. It's like how legit does he feel when you talk to him?
So I have always told him when I sit down and talk with him that I actually want to read through the books and read through all of it rather than having him trying to explain it to me in a our conversation. So I haven't even gone there yet verbally with him. But I call him my adopted grandpa, and that I have adopted him as hey, he's wonderful to sit down and talk with. And we've gone to lunch a couple of times and just sort of told me about, talking about his career in law enforcement at LAPD and working homicide. And it tracks with all the other law enforcement officers that I've ever worked with. He had a very eclectic upbringing. So just with his dad's uniqueness. But he's, very, very interesting guy. And it's become a relationship that I really value. I would love for the case to be solved, while he is still alive. That would be amazing. And he also wants that too, whether it's his dad or not. So
still examining and working on the case and looking for different angles and new evidence and things like that.
There is evidence that is there that investigators aren't interested in, according to him. So, and I understand the politics of the big departments and how, to me, it's just mind blowing. Why wouldn't a department want to solve the oldest, most popular high profile cold case in Los Angeles? Do it right now. Maybe that'll take the heat off of you for other things. But I also, I do understand that there are politics behind it. And people get really territorial over cases, and it's still technically an open case in Los Angeles. Like, there is a homicide detective that has that case assigned to them. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, he took all of the evidence he uncovered to the district attorney at the time, a couple, maybe 15 years ago. And the district attorney said, if your dad was alive, I would file on him right now. So, and I have copies of all those documents that he gave to the district attorney.
Does he ever come across as like super fringy or anything? Because I was just reading into it, and you don't even have to like look into him very deeply before you see that he's suspected his father of being the lipstick killer, the Zodiac, something about the jigsaw murderer.
Well, those are all the serial killings that she was talking about, like all within the same time period in Los Angeles. So, I mean, yeah, they were all happening around the same time. I think Wondery did a really good podcast on like all of those killings that were happening at the same time. I can't remember what it's called, but it might just be titled The Black Dahlia Murders, plural. But no, I mean, one-on-one, he doesn't come off as fringy. But it's a lot to digest. It really is. Yeah. But also cool to think about, you're like, well, what if, what if? That would be so crazy.
Does he ever give like an impression of regret or maybe shame, I guess is what I'm trying to say? Like, this is my dad, don't look at me the same way.
No, I don't think, he has a very good sense of self where it's not as if, those two things have been put together. He has other brothers as well. It's not like it is a very interesting family. And we know that from like the Root of Evil podcast and the TV show that was done and all of that. But it seems like his generation, people did pretty well and weren't as dysfunctional.
You keep mentioning these other podcasts as if you listen to anything else besides Crawlspace and Missing Maura Murray and Empty Frames. You must be told information about these podcasts, right?
Well, what's weird is I know that you stole your guest from Rebecca, and I know that's a thing you guys do. So, but at least that's Crawlspace, right? I mean,
what?
We do not
go. Stolen, I came willingly.
Yeah. We do not steal guests from Rebecca Sebastian. We simply go to her website and we look at her past shows and we say, oh, those are interesting guests. And we listen to the interviews and we say they're very fun, they're very knowledgeable and they make for great interviews. And it's more like a tribute.
Yeah. And then when we email them, ask them to be on, we say, hey, you've been on with our friend Rebecca Sebastian, and it would be really fun to just talk to us too.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good.
It's very disturbed by the rumors that are. It's your law. You can tell it however you want at the end of the day.
Oh,
yeah. I'll just take I'll take pointers from certain leaderships on how to present lies.
Okay. Have fun. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Good to see you, Shiloh. Yes, nice to see you. All right, so, cool. Yeah.
I noticed that you have a Nancy Drew book.
I do.
Strategically positioned behind you.
I do.
Yeah. So you were a Nancy Drew fan. Was it just strictly Nancy Drew, or did the little like Hardy Boys get in there?
I read a few Hardy Boys, but I mean, Nancy was my girl. I grew up just constantly consuming Nancy Drew books. And this was just one that like I found in my parents' basement a few years ago and was like, oh, well, I need to have that and have to display it prominently everywhere I go. But yeah, no, I mean, I've been a lover of mysteries for probably even since I was a kid. I think my initial, I really wanted to just solve mysteries. And I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to become a lawyer, is because I thought that there was some level of mystery solving. I'm like, I don't think I can make it as a cop. They got to drive around a lot and I don't know how to get from point A to point B. And that just seems like people yell at you all the time. And then I found out that people yell at lawyers all the time too. And I was very disappointed. But yeah, no, I absolutely grew up loving Nancy Drew.
That's crazy. Do you know when the book was written in the 30s?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it turns out I recently found out that because it's been a while since I read like the original versions of them, that they had to go through and make a few changes because apparently the original 1930s weren't super PC on some things, and so they kind of went through and made a few light edits.
She was just ahead of her time.
Behind her times now.
Oh, gotcha. Oh man, it looks like Jeff, our pal Jeff, wanted to slide into the spot, but we locked it on him.
Should we let him in?
Yeah, let him in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, it's unlocked. Holy moly!
This might be the most guests we've ever had going into the guest spot.
Well, I do want to talk about Amber Hagerman too.
Yeah.
And really how the Amber Alert came to be was that case, which I found very interesting reading in your book.
Yeah, that one was, I really wanted to include a chapter that had that kind of had some sort of a, you know, I guess not a silver lining because there's still a dead child at the end of the day, but that shows that, you know, occasionally something good can come from terrible, terrible things. And the Amber Alert case was exactly that, where you had this, you know, really remarkably terrible, tragic event that happened. But the result of it was a woman was, you know, watching the coverage on TV and got an idea. And speaking with her was really interesting because, you know, she was just a very normal person. She's, I believe, a massage therapist. And it was just one of those things where I think a lot of true crime enthusiasts, there's a case that gets to them. I think her story is very real for a lot of people, where she saw, you know, the coverage of it and she just was so drawn in and she just could not let it go. She just, you know, kept thinking about the case and thinking about it and just being like, I want to be able to do something. And she actually did. And it's absolutely remarkable. And that was a really hard chapter for me to write. I think that for personal reasons was probably, you had asked earlier, you know, sort of the most difficult one. I think that one personally was the most difficult one because I was like 6 months pregnant when I started working on that chapter. And so I had a few nightmares and I had a few cries. And but yeah, I thought that case really was something that I don't think a lot of people think about. You know, I think people are familiar with Amber Alerts. You know, they blow up our phone every now and then, but you know, the backstory to that I think is really remarkable.
Can I ask where those came from, if you don't mind sharing? What about that brought that reaction?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a crier anyway. You know, like I read my daughter the Lorax and like I cry at the end of it every time because it's so soon. Like, the trees, we got to save the trees. But no, for me, it was this reaction of like, oh my God, I'm bringing a kid into the world and she's not going to be safe. Like there's just nothing, there's just nowhere to hide. And how can I be doing this? And then I, you know, kind of took a couple breaths and I started looking into and that kind of got me looking into like statistics and things like that. And that's why I wanted to include a section in the book that kind of talks about how, you know, how rare these types of kidnappings are, that, you know, really people are safe majoritively. And that, you know, a lot of times crime happens between people that, you know, or, you know, is done by somebody that, you know, particularly crimes against children. And that kind of helped in some ways, was like a bit of a therapy for me, helped reassure me that, you know, the world is going to be an okay place for her. But yeah, but a lot of it was just, you know, just the thought of somebody taking a child was just really rough for me, and always, but especially, you know, sort of in that heightened circumstance.
And her case is still unsolved. Is this something that you, you know, when you were covering it as part of your book, did you ever consider maybe making this into a larger scale book or a larger scale project because it affected you the way it did?
I hadn't, you know, I've thought about sort of, you know, what are some other projects that I could do, you know, sort of after this one kind of, you know, settles down. and I think that would definitely be one of them that might be worth kind of digging into a bit more and seeing, you know, what else is out there about that case. The other one is probably the Freeway Phantom, where I thought, you know, this is a case that I'm, you know, really deserves kind of like that full scale, like podcast treatment type thing. I mean, I think that would be a really interesting, you know, similar to the Atlanta Murders podcast that came out, or Empty Frames, the only podcast I listen to.
Exactly.
You know, I think that one is definitely the you know, there's so much to the Freeway Phantom. You know, that you've got the culture at the time. You've got, you know, more discussion deserves about who these little girls were. You know, I think there's just so much there that really it deserves more than what it got, because really that's a case that I had difficulty finding information on. You know, I had to don't tell the DC library, but I had to steal a friend's library card because, you know, her mom's like,
oh my God, you just said that. It's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it is on
Cheyna,
YouTube.
This is streaming live.
This is just between us, right?
No,
right?
we can't edit this.
No, there's
1,000,
100,000 people listening to this.
at least.
The DC library is going to come for me. They're coming for me. I can hear the sirens already.
Oh no, Alice is calling the FBI.
Oh no, Alice, come on.
Oh geez. Well, you know what, Tim? You know what I'm hearing here is a pitch for a show on the Crawlspace Media Network, and I'm totally down with this. I think this would make a great show on the Crawlspace Media Network.
I think you guys got to snag it.
Let's make this happen. You already have the experience behind the microphone
and the library card. So
and the library card. We'll workshop this offline, but I'm dead serious.
I'm into it. I that's one of those cases where I just, you know, there was a few of them, but as I was writing this book, I'm like, there's just not. They gave me like 7,000 words, and I'm like, I need more. There's too much here that really deserves to be looked into and told. And that's one of I've kept all my stuff on that one. I just kind of keep eyeing that pile in my office. Like, we gotta work on that a little bit more.
Yeah, some of the murders that we cover are so disturbing, and Molly Bish is one that comes to mind that really disturbed me. Similar to what you were kind of saying about how Amber's case disturbed you, and I wonder sometimes if we're really not that safe. Like, is it worth it feeling less safe in doing this work? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I think it's gotta be, right? Because
yeah.
You're more aware now. Like the bad guys are still the same amount.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've kind of, you know, shorn up my defenses when I was a prosecutor, and then I went and I married a prosecutor who is still well, now he's an assistant U.S. attorney. But you know, so I spent the last, you know, however many years we've been together, you know, every day coming home, and I'd be like, what'd you work on today? And hearing about, you know, he used to do murders, he used to do rapes, he used to do like just really, really difficult cases. And, you know, we would talk through them, and he'd talk me through his, you know, before trial, we'd talk through these things. So I had really developed a sort of, I guess like a shored up armor when it comes to talking about these cases. It gets a little bit different though. I felt when I was working on the book, when I'm like deep into it, when it's more than just a conversation, when it's like I am reading through all of the police reports, and I'm reading through the news coverage, and I'm looking and I'm watching all of the documentaries. Like, you just become so consumed by these cases, and it does get difficult. It does get really tricky. I think that the way that I sort of work through that is having a sense of humor, and realizing that, you know, this stuff's going to happen whether I find a way to joke or not. And the other thing too is just, you know, I'm very open about the fact that, you know, like I speak to a therapist, and like I am very aware of my mental health. And that's something that I've done sort of progressively throughout, you know, when I was in college through even today. So, you know, I think there's different things that you can do to really ensure that that you're protecting yourself while you are working on very difficult cases like this.
Yeah, you see a lot of people who just get burnt out. We've seen that numerous times. We've covered Maura Murray's case. People just dive in because they love the mystery. They love untangling that knot, and they think they can do it. And I mean, you kind of said it with the cases that you covered in your book. You're not going to solve something like someone looking into it. Just as a hobby, most likely will not solve something that has gone unsolved for, 15, 20, 25 years. So, and then you see people, I guess, fall into this abyss of, they didn't understand that this was like actual reality and it's actually dark. And there's a spectrum of psychosis that you have to become aware of. And you're right. The sense of humor helps. Tim and I have recently learned about this spectrum of psychosis, which goes, it runs the gamut from like narcissism to like full blown psychopath. And then there's the Machiavellianism and all of this stuff. And it's like, I think Heather Bish said something when she was on with us, to the effect of, it would be nice if something about like, it'd be nice if it was just one bad guy. It'd be nice if you caught, one bad, like, and that he was responsible for that. And it's, the reality is that there's so many types of bad guys out there.
Yeah. And she was hoping that Maul's killer and Holly Perinian her killer were the same, because she doesn't think they are, and they're two young girls who were murdered around the same area around the same time. And it's a lot harder to I guess rationalize or realize that it's probably two different.
Yeah, I mean it's easy to it's easy in two ways. I mean, it's easy to kind of see, sort of the vague outlines of a case and go, oh, that's interesting, I'm curious, and just jump in. And then it becomes really easy to lose yourself into it. Because I think that humans are naturally curious, particularly humans that are interested in true crime. We're curious. We want to know what happened, and human nature requires some sense of finality. We want closure. We want to know what happened in these cases. And I think that sometimes it becomes difficult to pull yourself back and to take a step back and be like, you know what, we might just not get that sense of closure, and I just have to be okay with it. Can I ask, what is going on with the honey? I'm so curious.
Sorry, the chat room is a lot of times on a different plane. And I know
I'm sorry to just completely break it up. I just keep seeing like honey. Somebody's buying honey. How much is the honey?
Yeah. I've been on the brink of laughing just from some of the comments in the chat room through some real serious topics that we're actually having on the air. So
it's
unrelated.
Kind of tough.
But this is the honey. This is Lance's company, and that's his dog.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I love it.
So, yeah, we just had our first round of selling honey from the hives in Salem, Massachusetts. This is a brand new venture that I started to do, and we use Tim's chugging it. My dog Eric is the CEO of the company, and he sort of runs the operations. And people just started recently receiving their honey that was sold out. So I see Esther and Brock. Let's get your addresses offline, and we'll send you a couple of bottles. And Cheyna, if you want a bottle of honey, I would love some. Yeah.
I'm a honey enthusiast. I have honey sticks currently in my pantry. I would love some more honey. So yes, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We'll grab your address offline, or if you just want to give it live right here. You've already spilled the tea on the library card theft. So, which actually
I want to make it as difficult as possible for them to find me.
Right. Yeah. So you stole, there's the website, Super Blonde Honey. Thanks, Pi Rational, on that. So you stole a library card, and you covered. I stole
the library card number.
Okay, and you covered the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist.
Ooh, I see where you're going with this, Lance.
I'm not making definitive connections here, but I would like to know where you were at March 18th, 1990.
I'm gonna have to plead the fifth, sir.
Well,
Okay.
that sounds like an admission of guilt. I think we have solved Isabella Stewart Museum heist. Who knew? Well, I have a kind of a fun question for you. You cover a lot of crime. You've read a lot of crime books. You've written a lot about crime. What is your favorite or a standout adaptation of a true crime story that is made like, you know, a TV series or a movie?
Oh, that's a great question. Stand out for being good or stand out for being bad?
Ooh, I was thinking good, but let's do both.
Because the Black Dahlia, I think it was called Black Dahlia. The one with Hilary Swank was just exceptional, and I think Josh Hartnett was in that one too. That one is just a exceptionally terrible movie. Really disappointing. As far as a really good one, oh God, I don't know why I'm having trouble thinking of one off the top of my head. What do you guys like?
For true crime adaptation?
Yeah.
I mean, Zodiac, it doesn't get much better than Zodiac. Zodiac's great.
The David Fincher one.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Nope. Yeah. That's got to be it, right?
Yeah.
That one's just an incredible movie. That's for me is peak Robert Downey Jr. I mean, forget
Yeah.
Iron Man. I mean, he is fantastic in that movie.
Oh, he plays such a great character. His character
Yes.
is Paul Avery, right? Like he plays
Yes,
that
I
character
love Paul
so
Avery.
well.
Mhm.
One of the best scenes is towards the end when he's in the bar and he sees, you know, Robert Graysmith on the news, and he just has that one line where he's just like, fucking library, and it's so well. It's one of the best lines in the whole movie. It's so good.
Yes.
You know what's shocking about the Black Dahlia movie is that Brian De Palma made it, and it's so bad.
I know. When I was working on this, I was like, oh, I think I missed that one. And so I'm like, oh, Brian De Palma, this is probably going to be really great. How did I miss it the first time around? And then I watched it and I was just like, what are we doing here, people? What happened? Who hurt you? Why is this happening?
God, well, very random. I don't think we've ever mentioned Brian De Palma on a Get Vocal or in any one of our shows, and we've already
Definitely
mentioned
not.
2 of his movies tonight.
What was the other one?
Untouchables.
Oh, duh. That's right. See, he's really hit or miss, right? Like
He
that's a
really is.
great-
hit or miss.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are just way on the other end of the spectrum. That's
Yeah.
too bad.
Black Dahlia was so disappointing. I'm with you there. I remember being very excited for that
Yes.
movie when it came out.
Yeah, and it really
is it?
played into the whole like this, you know, we're treating her as some sort of like weird sexist object kind of a thing. It just got so nuts and yeah, no,
Yeah.
not for me.
Henry was a
Yeah.
good movie too. Based on, was that Henry Lee Lucas?
I have not seen that.
Oh,
one.
Henry
Portrait
Portrait
of
of a Killer.
Yeah, Michael Rooker.
Yeah.
Michael,
Yeah, you
yeah.
got that. Rooker. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a screwed up movie. That's a tough one to make it all the way through, but it's good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Jeff didn't grab the spot. Typical Jeff. All talk and no. You know, doesn't step up to the plate.
Jarek.
Okay.
And I just want to say that Esther's saying that I don't like Paris Hilton. I just want to show this real quick and just say that that's for Paris Hilton and for Esther. I was not making fun of Paris Hilton, Esther. See the chat room, Cheyna, it really goes off.
I love it.
It's so much different than what the conversation a lot of times. But it's fun. And a lot of times if I lose it. There'll be times where I'll completely lose the conversation.
Sometimes I have to close the chat feature because someone will be telling this like truly personal story, and I'm trying to hold it together because you can't all you have to do is just look down a little bit. Just look down a little bit, and you see these comments.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I've been having the whole time. Like, this is amazing. These people are great. Sign me up every week. I love this.
Oh, Shannon said we will break you. No, you won't. Challenge accepted.
We teased before we started broadcasting here that we were gonna spill the tea about the Gardner heist. And
Yes, I'm so excited. Go.
Latest
I'm
Twitter.
gonna mute myself. Okay.
My goodness.
Well, without a full, I mean, it's a little bit of I guess a lot of background, and I don't know a lot of the background, but we tweeted recently that we blocked Anthony Amore, who is the director of security at the Gardner Museum. We blocked him on Twitter which is ironic when you block him, the director of security, for he was liking tweets and seemed to support someone who was issuing threats of violence against a different guest on Empty Frames. And those two had, and you know, in fairness, our friend Turbo had not been probably completely fair to Amore in every single tweet that he sent. You know, he definitely provokes him, but he got a reaction, and there ended up being like a sort of a troll account, which seemed to be almost like an anonymous account run by someone who was making threats. Actually referenced that Untouchables scene where De Niro with the baseball bat, referenced it in 2 different tweets, and Amore liked those tweets and followed that guy. So that was why we blocked him and made a public spectacle of it.
Yeah, it started to play out the way these trolls play out. It was really funny. I think I might have messaged Turbo because he was, you know, concerned about it. And it, like, Tim and I deal with like super trolls that, and I remember like way back when it first happened, it was very shocking. And you try to figure out like the mentality of these trolls, like why are people doing this? And the whole Empty Frames trolling thing was kind of funny. It was kind of like endearing and adorable that Anthony Amore was trying to troll, and they're just so bad at it. It was so clearly a troll, so clearly like a sock account, and he didn't give it time to like mature. Like, so the real trolls will give it years, give that puppet account years to mature. Right. And then they sprinkle in things and other topics and all that. This guy didn't do that. And it just took one call out and that guy blocks everybody and it's probably off Twitter. And now Tim made the move to block Amore, and that's what you do. No, so you're blocked. Like, that's it. You're on notice, you're blocked, you're being an asshole, and you're done. So
you're being an asshole. And if you're the director of security, you need to set a much better example than that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really disappointing.
Like, I'm sure I don't endorse every single Twitter follower I have or every single tweet they make. That would be pretty much impossible. But this like troll account had like 14 followers and had just been launched as an account in like July or August. And Amore was one of the followers and had retweeted him, or I believe, as well.
Like, really? Come on.
Yeah.
So we were
amateur hour.
It really is. And you know what? We have a nickname for Anthony Amore, and it's Double A, because he's in Double A. Sorry.
You're not gonna make the bigs, kid.
Sorry, not sorry. You know, like we put a hashtag "do your job" on that tweet, because do your fucking job, man. What are you doing on Twitter?
Right.
Solve those crimes, man.
He's the guy. He's the one who said, "Oh, I don't give a shit what someone thinks about what some guy on Twitter said." He had that quote at one point. And he apparently really does care what people say on Twitter.
Jesus Christ, Esther. I hope he gets assassinated over the weekend. Good Lord.
No, we do not hope any violence happens at all.
I hope he gets assassinated.
That's crazy. Esther is joking, obviously.
She's very fired up about it. But no, I mean, the problem with it is that you have a man in a position who is publicly proclaimed that this is his obligation to find the artwork, his duty, but everything is kept like in such tight wraps, and no one gets the information, or no one's like privy to even like a conversation to it. I don't know what was your experience with him?
Yeah, I didn't really get one. I had reached out to the museum, a couple times because they weren't really responding. I got a, sort of like, oh, what is your thing? And we'll get back to you. And I explained it. And then I just never heard back. I tried a couple more times. I never really got through to anybody over there. I think I made a call once and got somebody's voicemail. I don't know, but it was unsuccessful. So I was unable to really connect with him. And his website's interesting, though.
Yeah.
I've never known a security director to have their own website. Thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, or a guy who actually actively tries to get another job while employed. He
What
ran
job
for
was he
office.
trying to do?
He ran for
Oh.
office in a public office in Massachusetts, and so I don't know. I don't know how that works. How you you actively try to get another job while you have a job, and he didn't get it. So I don't know. Whatever. It's not personal. Honestly, it's not personal. Like but
Right.
I will say it got really annoying last weekend, and we will not back down from calling him out.
Yeah, and the writing was on the wall when we first started doing this project. Our partner in this project, he's anonymous. He goes by Mr. K. He had reached out to the museum to see if they would be a part of Empty Frames. The other podcast, Last Scene, was also in production, and instead of being polite and I guess having a conversation with him, like, we didn't care if they said, hey, let's work together on it, but we would understand a no. Like, we're not able to do this. He spoke to their media director, their public relations director or something, and then called us. And the job that he does full time requires a lot of FaceTime with people. And he had said, like, my current job, I get a lot of shit from people, and I have people talking to me in a certain way a lot of the times. And he goes, I have never been spoken to the way the woman who does their public relations spoke to me. He goes, she was like berating him. She said, like, we're not worthy to cover that. Like, it was such an elitist thing. And, the fact that they didn't respond to you, they probably looked at you and they were like, what's her fault? Yeah. Like, what is she done? Oh, public rate. Like,
what's her lineage? Is she old money from Boston?
I'm not of the dynasty. My bad.
Exactly. Is she old? Like, does she speak like she has a hot potato in her mouth? No, she doesn't. But that's their attitude. That's their silly attitude. And Isabella Stewart Gardner would be rolling in her grave.
She really would. I mean, based on what I've learned about her, I mean, she was very much like, this is for the people. And also, I think she kind of would have gotten a kick out of the whole heist and probably would have loved for, a bunch of people coming forward and trying to solve it.
I bet she would have been in the back.
Yeah, and I bet she would have loved. I mean, at least obviously she probably would have hated the fact that her property was stolen.
Sure.
But hanging the frames like that is kind of brilliant. It really is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think she would have gotten a kick out of that after when she was, done being mad that they cut them out of the frames and possibly ruined them. She'd probably be like, "Oh, you got me. That's a good one."
Yeah.
Can you imagine the tongue lashing she would have given the security guards, Rick and Randy?
Oh right.
Could you imagine that? Like, imagine she was alive. Like,
did you do that?
I'm picturing like the old broad from Downton Abbey coming in and just, how dare you?
Yes.
What are you doing?
Role play. Sorry, Mrs. Gardner. I guess I let the thieves in by accident.
Oh, young man.
I didn't hit the
I'm
button.
Ashamed of you. I'm disappointed and ashamed. My precious aunt. How dare you?
I have never.
Upon my word. How could you? I paid you minimum wage, young man. Minimum wage.
I know, right? Yeah, those security guys. I think that is definitely one issue we've realized is a serious issue at museums everywhere. At least has been in the past. That I just think like most of the guards there, they're standing up all day. Like they don't really care. Like they're not incentivized to give a shit.
No, and like from some of the museums I've been to, like they're so big and you've got like 4 guys just like trying to, go through the whole thing. And I'm guessing on a day-to-day basis, they're mostly in charge of saying, don't touch that. So they're not really prepared to like take action if, the Joker comes in and steals all their art.
Yeah. Well, a great Batman reference.
Yes.
But if, what was I going to say? Oh, my neighbor and her cousin, doesn't matter. My neighbor and her relative were looking for something to do, and they were like, I think we're going to go to the Gardner Museum. Do you recommend it? And I'm like, absolutely. So they went to the Gardner Museum last week, and they came back, and they were like, it was beautiful. But she was telling me every single one of the guards couldn't give a shit. Like they looked like they were falling asleep. They barely like had an expression on their face, and it's just like you were saying. They were just basically there to be like, don't stand so close to that, you know, take a step back. But one man, I think his name was, shoot, I'll have to get his name. One man stood out. He was giving their family the entire background of every piece of art that he knew. He was in his mid to late 50s, I think, and he was running through the entire heist with them. And it got to the point where the other. It was his name was Joe Gibbons, which was really, you know, coincidence. But yeah, so he really impressed them, and then someone had to come up to him and say like, "Hey," I'll just call him Albert for now. Say, "Hey, Albert, your shift's over. You got to go." Like they had to like tell him to leave, and they were like, "It was very nice meeting you." And the person who replaced him was just this stiff like hunk of wax, like. You know, just standing there. Yeah, no information, nothing, no personality. Yeah, so unfortunately that's the way it's going.
I really thought this story was going to go another way, and they're going to be like, they turned around and he was gone, and they're like, that security guard hasn't worked here for 30 years.
Oh my god, why didn't I think of that? That's such a much better ending.
Yeah, that's definitely what happened.
Yeah, and they were like, we were just talking to Albert, and they were like, Albert.
He doesn't work here.
Albert hasn't worked here. Albert fell off the roof 30 years ago.
That building though is really amazing. The artwork is incredible. The collection that she gathered, Isabella herself, is really just amazing. So definitely visit the Gardner Museum. And it's real sad, honestly, that we end up being at odds with them, because that was obviously never our intention. So I feel bad about it. But again, we won't back down if we feel like they're wrong in this sense. I do think they're wrong, at least with what we're talking about in blocking them. As far as the investigation goes, they've recovered 0 out of 13 stolen pieces of artwork. They don't really owe us an investigation necessarily, but I will say that the pandemic, I believe, brought some public funds to the Gardner Museum. So in that way, you could say adjacently, they kind of do owe us a little bit of an investigation, or at least some goddamn explanation of what is going on with their investigation, because they do supposedly run an investigation.
Yeah.
But the last thing I want to say on this is, obviously it's got to be a difficult mystery to solve. It's not like Anthony Moray or anyone doesn't want the artwork back. So it's you know, the people are trying, I think.
Yeah.
And they don't they don't owe us an investigation. But you are correct that they receive public funds. There are people who have memberships, and beyond the pandemic, there are people who have memberships monthly. You know, they give monthly to that museum. So yeah, the board doesn't owe like a solution to the investigation. They certainly owe a change in how they're approaching the investigation, which is what Turbo has brought to the table, which is why on earth are you offering a reward for all of the paintings, all of the artwork, all of these artifacts to come back in good condition? That's absolutely impossible. You need to break it up and assign a value to each one of them, and they haven't done that since the inception of that return policy. They've never changed it. They've never, and I mean, it's been so long. I don't know exactly when they put that policy in place with the reward, but you know, the theft happened in 1990, like 30 years. Like,
yeah, there's no way those pieces of art are in decent condition at this point. I mean, I'd be surprised if they're even like in one piece. Quite honest.
Oh yeah.
No, zero chance that they're in good condition unless they're in like a museum, you know, or right. somewhere like that keeps the air perfect. Like we do know that New England summers are terrible for that kind of thing. We know that New England winters are terrible for that too. So if it's in New England, any of that art is in New England, it's not in good condition anymore.
Yeah. It's got to be in a climate controlled storage facility. I really loved the idea that it was actually in the museum. just in a spot where they would never think to look if it was behind a wall or something. And also, I love the idea that it is in storage, in archived storage in another museum, like the MFA or
that's
something.
a good point. Yeah, because I was listening to some podcast that
Empty frames.
I was being told about a podcast
Exactly.
and it was all about how there's just like hordes of art in various museums, and like nobody really knows what's there, but they're not putting it out, but they're not sharing it, and it's not really cataloged very well. But yeah, I mean, basically art museums they're a bunch of hoarders. So let's start digging through them, see what we can find.
Man, I would love to. I think that would be such a great punctuation mark on the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist. Is it was right there the whole time. Yeah. Everybody's talking about mobsters and Whitey Bulger and organized crime and what is it, the Croatian mob? Is that the other one? Corsican mob. Yeah. That sounds nasty. Like I don't even. I feel like when you say that, they're at your doorstep. So they sound so dangerous. But it would be so great if it was just these filmmakers and they just figured out a way to put it in archived condition or an archived storage in another museum. There's a lot of activity going on in the chat.
Yeah. I know.
Trying so hard to not be distracted.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't know where the art is. I do think that there's a decent chance that it's in Europe, that Robert Whitman, the former head of the FBI's art crime unit, was potentially onto it at one point. That seems credible from reading his book, but I don't really know. Well, I don't know how to get there. It got put in a boat, I guess. Like all that stuff got put in a boat.
Why don't you ask your second cousin, Miles Connor?
I don't know.
He's kidding on this one.
No. I really am digging the comedy satire that Tim's extended family, unbeknownst to him, is connected to all of the cases that we've talked about. And then one day he's just like, holy shit.
Huh, I'm right in the middle of
my family.
I'm right in the middle of all this. Wow. Nice.
There's a missing link to all of this. It was you all along.
And it's Tim Polier. It's Crawlspace. Well, it's 10:07.
We've done it again.
We've done it again. The church bells from the center of town struck 10, and we've gone 7 minutes beyond.
Oh my God.
Yes. Everyone loves it.
Brock says family time is not over.
I like this Brock fella. I keep reading his stuff. I'm like, you seem like a great time, dude.
It's a great chat room.
Yeah, it's a great chat room. And I'm gonna emphasize again, I'm so glad that Brock is here, because Brock lives in Louisiana. And right when the hurricane hit, he wasn't on our Get Vocal, shot him a couple messages, and I'm so glad to see that he's doing okay. We were worried. We were worried about you.
Oh God.
I know, it's so good, right? You're like, am I on with Dame Judi Dench?
It's truly spot on, Lance.
It's spot on.
It's perfect. It's perfection, I dare say.
See, I don't need to leave my house. You guys are bringing all the culture to me. I love it.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much.
We have a follow-up show where we read Shakespeare in that accent.
Yes.
Let's
do it.
Or not to be.
I'm there for it.
Tim, you were going to bring up the Dean murder, and I brought my.
I was going to. You're right. You're right. Let's mention it real quick because I meant to segue to it when I brought this out earlier. Because there's a connection, the Honey and the Dean murder, and the Dean murder, Cheyna, is a murder from 1918 from Jaffrey, New Hampshire, where Lance is from. Yeah, this one's personal to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a wild story. I guess I just wanted to bring it up kind of because I really intended to segue to it smoothly while we were talking about the honey, but I missed my opportunity about a half hour ago for the smooth transition anyway.
Oh, so this was in reference to the honey. I thought you were going to bring it up as one of the cases.
Well, that's where I was going to segue from, and I blew it.
I see.
Next time.
Some of the segues, you know, they were really seamless tonight. I gotta say.
Absolutely.
Oh, our segues were I couldn't find a seam. I was looking.
Except for this one. This one's
pretty ham-handed.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah, we've petered out.
Ends the night.
I feel like we're all just awkwardly standing at the door, like we should go now, and like we're shaking hands multiple times. We're just like nobody wants to go.
And it's like, well, let me know that you got home safe.
Well, thanks everybody.
Are you holding your keys in your hand when you walk to your car?
And you just keep slowly walking there. You're like, I'm half in my car, I'm half out of my car.
You got your hand on the door and you're still waving. Like
I got to adjust my lighting for the next show. I really look like I'm glistening right now. I'm not. I'm my body temperature is good. Okay. I think it's the lighting.
Well, this has been a wonderful night. Thank you so much, Cheyna Roth, for joining us here tonight.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Cold Cases. Yeah, check out the book Cold Cases. You can get it on Amazon. It is excellent. I really love it. It's a great view at a lot of cases. And thank you,
Brock.
Yeah,
thank you guys so much for having me. This has been fabulous.
I have one more question. I have the Kindle version.
Sure.
But is there like an Audible version that will be released, or like an audio?
Not that I know of. But if you'd like, I will record something for you. I will pick a chapter and I will read it for you, and you guys can like throw it on here or something.
Oh, you know what? I hear?
We can do a thing.
I hear a whole new podcast. We'll just go through your book chapter by chapter. All right, we have so many things to workshop offline.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for having me.